everyone's focusing on Facebook ads and social ads and email marketing and, all those things that are great. And people are always like, SEO is such a long-term game. And it is. You can't start a site from scratch, especially now. But most businesses that have been around for a little while, there's so much untapped potential in that SEO.
It's the eCommerce Master Plan Podcast. Here to help you solve your marketing problems and grow your e-commerce business. Cutting through the hype to bring you inspiration and advice from the e-commerce sector and beyond. Here's your host, Chloe Thomas.
Hello and welcome. It's great to have you here. Thank you for hitting play and choosing to listen to one of our inspiring guests. In this episode, we are talking to a fascinating e-commerce entrepreneur who kind of specializes in buying things, buying e-commerce stores and growing them fast and then selling them on. He does it in a very efficient, focused way. He'll be sharing some of his tips and tricks as we go through this, but also sharing how he's done it with the brand he's come on the show to talk about. And very quickly, in 12 months, 10x their growth, taking them to $2 million a year. So lots of interesting stuff. His top tips are very good too. So do make sure you listen to the end of the episode, and then you'll also get my thoughts too. We all know promotions work, but they damage brands and margins. RevLifter's intelligent offers drive results by using behavioural signals to target the right customers at the right time. When Radley London partnered with RevLifter, they saw 15% more conversions, 20% higher AOV, and an 8% saving on promotional costs. Wow! Stop wasting discounts on people who would buy anyway. You can try RevLifter free for 90 days. Visit ecmp.info/RevLifter to learn more and let RevLifter handle the heavy lifting. That's ecmp.info/RevLifter. ecmp.info/RevLifter. And now to introduce our special guest. Tom White is the owner of The Best Backyard, an Australian e-commerce store selling outdoor kids' play equipment, furniture and other garden products. Founded in 2020, Tom bought the business in 2024 and in 12 months has rocketed sales to nearly $2 million. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Chloe. Thanks for having me here. Really looking forward to sharing some things on the podcast.
Me too. I'm fascinated by what you do and what you're achieving with The Best Backyard. So it's great to have you here. But how did you end up in the world of e-commerce?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a journey for me. My accent's a bit mixed, but I'm originally from the UK, now living in Australia. And when I first moved here, my background's in marketing. That's what I did in London before moving to Australia. And when I came to Australia, it was difficult for me to find a job in a kind of country area, and kind of explored the online world from there. I did a few things and ended up buying a very small website about natural toothache relief. I think it cost me like $100 or something, and probably spent a few hundred hours on it in terms of working on the search engine optimization, working on the content and the conversion rate. And I think I sold it for $200. So I'm not sure what my hourly rate it was. Maths isn't very good, but it wasn't a lot. But it kind of gave me a bit of a bug from there and thought maybe I could do this. And so then, invested in a slightly bigger website and did the same thing again and started doing some search engine optimization work, some consulting work as well. And that was a great way for me to be able to work and travel, split my time between England and Australia. And then I was always doing content sites for probably 8 to 10 years. And then 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more, I started looking into the e-commerce space as the kind of content site model got harder, as Google started making all of its changes. For those people who have been in the SEO world for a while will know, Google changes its algorithm constantly, and it used to be the Wild West. You used to be able to game the system completely, and now that's much harder to do. So I actually purchased my first e-commerce business from a marketplace called Flipper, which some people might be aware of, which is a marketplace that just sells online businesses. It was a small mobility aid retailer based in Australia, very small at the time. I owned that for about a year and a half and built that up for, what was a reasonable 6-figure exit. And that again was another light bulb moment to say, this again can be something that I could do again. The pattern you'll probably see here is that I sometimes see shiny objects and, I'm doing one project and I see something else and think, oh yeah, I could add that on. And it's always harder to do in reality than to try and keep one project. And then, a couple of exits later, The Best Backyard was up for sale. The owner who founded it, the previous owner, she'd kind of taken it to the level that she could take it to with her skills. She was working full time. It's a very seasonal business, which adds some complexity to it as well. And so that again was for sale on a business for sale website. And it looked like a good opportunity. I could see there was a way to bring in some kind of social impact in there as well, which is something I'd kind of felt was lacking in some of those other businesses. And ways to kind of give back. And that's where I am now, really. Yeah.
What I find really fascinating about your story, Tom, apart from the fact I'm having flashbacks to Penguin and Panda, just to fully bring back that SEO nightmare fear that we all had back when all that was going on. If you don't know, Google it. We're not even going to go down that route, even though I've mentioned it. But the other thing is, I think a lot of people with your skill set, learning how to do SEO might dabble in playing around with a content website to hone your skills. And then they get completely stuck into consultancy, or they sit around waiting for the lightning bolt of an idea and then they create their own e-commerce store. But you've always gone purchase, improve, sell again and again and again. So what do you think? It makes complete sense when you're talking about it, but it's such a thing that so few people actually decide to do or seem to decide to do. How did you decide that was going to be the route you were going to go, rather than, come up with your own product idea, but to buy an existing business, improve it, sell it, move it on, try again?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think probably partly because of the way I started and I saw someone selling a site and I thought, that looks kind of interesting. But I guess there's always been that idea that kind of flywheel is really hard to turn to get started. And, the marketing flywheel, the product flywheel, there's so many kind of moving parts to get right there. And so many businesses don't make it past that initial stage of being a very small startup. So I saw the idea of acquiring a business as a way to jumpstart that process. So rather than having to go through some of those hurdles had already been jumped and had been proven that the business was viable. Even if it was a very small business, it kind of proved that it had legs and that, could kind of take it to the next level. And also had some history and had some kind of customer base and had some, search engine rankings and things from there. So, I think it is a good opportunity for people, and it is often overlooked, even as an existing business who might want to acquire a business to the complementary business that kind of sits outside of their brand, or even to bring another business kind of within their brand that they acquire.
One slightly cheeky question. This may be really wide of the mark, Tom, so feel free to give us your honest opinion on this one. Do you think it's easier to scale a business when you're less emotionally attached to it? When it's not your baby that you created. I know to some extent when you buy something, it becomes your baby as a business. You become quite passionate about it. Do you think there's an ease of growth when you don't have all these preconceived ideas that started before it actually launched as to what it needs to be? Is it more freeing?
Yeah, I think it probably is because as a founder, you are attached to it. You've been through that pain of the, getting it launched. Maybe you had some kind of initial passion or why for setting up the business. And, I've always purchased a business that I've had an interest in. It's been in a space where I'm interested in, and I can see a way to, develop a unique angle on there. But I think, definitely is easier to grow. You also have that consultant mindset when you look at someone else's business. I was consulting for other businesses and I was thinking, hang on, I'm adding all this revenue to their business through, SEO consulting or digital marketing consulting. And I was like, I could like take that business and grow it myself. And that seemed like a better way than having to answer to clients and, handle those things as well. Although obviously running an e-commerce business has its complexities and challenges as well.
Well, let's get into that. That's a good way of taking us into the best backyard. So you've got the keys. Let's say, the deal is done. You've got the keys. What was the first thing you did once you took ownership of the business? Because it's not a simple e-commerce business. This is not a product that goes through someone's letterbox. It's got lots of layers of operational complexity, content complexity, and everything else. So how did you decide where to get cracking?
Yeah, so for some reason, I ended up taking over just before Black Friday with a seasonal business, which was much more disorganized than I was led to believe. And so there were a significant number of challenges on handover of this one, including the financials not being exactly as they were described. So, yeah, I guess the first step is working with the owner, making sure that there's within the contract, although you never actually want to use the contract because that's a sign your relationship's breaking down, making sure in the contract handover and training and support is kind of a key part of that process, which we had. So the first step is, really shadowing the owner. And at that point, it was one customer service overseas, a customer service person. And really understanding what it is exactly that, they do, because you only get a very surface level understanding. There's also all the technical parts that have to happen, like getting access to the Shopify backend, getting access to the analytics, getting all the suppliers accounts done. Like hopefully that's all in place, but often it isn't. So there is a definite, like, what have I done thing that happens for the first few weeks of everything. And this was because it was in the middle of like Black Friday, and it's a very seasonal business. So it's all outdoor kids stuff. So people buying for Christmas and outdoor furniture. It's obviously summer in Australia, Christmas time, like November, December, it's warm. So the season really, like a majority of the business is September to kind of January is where the majority of that revenue is made. So it was definitely a baptism of fire, that one.
But in some ways it's kind of cool to take over them because, they say here in the UK, they say the best time to buy a pub is the beginning, is just before Easter. I live in Cornwall, very touristy area. So the best time to buy a pub in Cornwall is the day before the Easter holidays begin, because then you've got great cash flow for the next 6 months or so until you get to September, and then you've got enough cash to see you through the winter. So it's in some ways great for cash flow because all your sales are there, great for stress testing and learning about the business, because actually by the time you've been through that, you know exactly what you need to do in the off season. There's no questions. But I want to come back, you said about discovering things you weren't expecting after you've bought. And my perspective on this is, yes, there's due diligence. The checks you do before you buy the business. But it would be kind of like you hit that law of diminishing returns in the due diligence process where you could carry on forever, but you're just spending time that you could be cracking on with stuff and actually doing the deal. So is there a point at which you go, actually, I've done enough due diligence now. I know I'm going to discover some gremlins, but I'm okay. And how do you work out where that point is?
Yeah, it is a challenge, and I guess it depends on the deal size to some extent and your risk tolerance at that point. Like I always look at a deal and think, what's the worst case scenario? And often the worst case scenario is you could turn it around and sell it for what you bought it for, even if it wasn't exactly, what it was described at. You've already identified some ways that you could, some quick wins, some of those 80-20, things to increase revenue, increase traffic, decrease costs. And so often the risk is very low. And for me, it's always having some kind of trust and rapport with the owner of the business. I've almost always purchased a business directly with the owner rather than through a broker, or if there is a broker, try and sideline the broker as much as possible and actually deal with the owner. Just like when you're buying a house, you never actually get to speak to them. But, if you understand what the dream was and what the history was, you can have a much better relationship than when it just becomes purely financial. And often the owner also wants the business to succeed. Just like when I've sold a business, it's really painful if you watch it then decline because the new owner hasn't done those things. And so, I've always been happy if someone reaches out, a few years later and says, hey, Tom, like, I'm struggling with this thing, like, can you help? And it's like, yeah, because it's kind of still feels like it's partly mine. So, yeah, I think it is. You've got to take a point where you say, enough's enough. I've done the basics, like the contract is kind of solid. I'm going to give it a go and, work on trust at some point.
So you had that kind of like big induction of it's Black Friday, it's summer, we're selling garden products. Okay, we're going to get through this. So I'm assuming quite a lot of firefighting was fixing the basic infrastructure stuff. Then you went into growth mode, and I believe your primary growth mode was SEO, which is unusual in this day and age. So obviously you've got the skill set in SEO. How did you come to be, kind of betting the house on the SEO growth that you could achieve?
Yeah, so often what I see, like SEO is seen in this kind of e-commerce space often is like, everyone's focusing on Facebook ads and social ads and email marketing and, all those things that are great and that I'm not as good at. And but SEO always seems like, and people are always like, SEO is such a long-term game, and it is. You can't start a site from scratch, especially now, like Google's favoring brands and things. There is a process, but most businesses that have been around for a little while, there's so much untapped potential in that SEO model. Like this site already had some authority and it just needed a bit of it was some work to do, but it wasn't like, where you can see from the growth numbers, like, it wasn't like we waited 12 months to see that SEO benefit. It was like gradually over those first few months through the technical changes to the website, just simple stuff like creating collections for different keywords that weren't there already and using the general authority of the site for those collections to rank in Google, particularly now, like Google's favoring e-commerce sites to rank above kind of content sites, e-commerce sites that it can see are kind of trustworthy and somewhat authoritative. And in Australia and in the UK, maybe not so much in the US where the competition is, perhaps higher just because of it's a few years advance from those other places. But, still in the US, it happens as well, where just by, creating some content on those collection pages, by doing a little bit of keyword research and creating those collection pages, creating a few blog posts that link to those pages, getting your navigation right, making sure the site's loading quickly. These are all things that also help your audience as well. Then the site starts to move, and then it's just a case of the flywheels turning. So, you can then go out and maybe, collaborate with some other bloggers, get a post on their site, competitions where you're getting a link back, that kind of thing to build the authority. But it doesn't have to be the pay SEO, company $5,000 for eternity. $5,000 a month for eternity. And it can be a sprint, I guess, rather than a kind of ongoing project that then you can just iterate on as you go. So yeah, the majority of our sales are organic, both organic shopping results and organic, regular results. And then we do a bit of Google ads and a bit of Facebook ads and things as well.
You say we. How has the team evolved since you took over? Because, if it's just you taking this over with maybe a bit of customer service support, I can't see you getting a single bit of copy written from that Black Friday through till March. So what does the team look like? Have you got a group of people you bring in when you take over one of these? Do you work with the existing team? Do you hire? How do you do the manpower element?
I always like to look at a business that is location independent. Again, being someone who's lives on the other side of the world from my family back home, and who likes to travel. So I'm always looking at either a business that is already location independent or a business that I can make location independent. So, for example, this business did hold some stock and the seller was fulfilling some of the smaller items, but very quickly I put those in a 3PL. So I reduced that kind of, and actually the cost was, is very similar once you add time and things into it. So we also, some of those products are drop shipped from the supplier because they're such, we're talking big, 200 kilogram play sets and big lounges and stuff. It's from both a carbon footprint and a cost perspective, it's better often to drop ship those. But having stock in the 3PL just gives you that flexibility that drop shipping doesn't, particularly when you're trying to bundle or you're doing specials. And you also lose control when you drop ship as well, and give that to the supplier. So going back to the team, it was one part-time customer service. I guess it was full-time at that time of year, part-time, the rest of the year. She also wasn't very good at her job either, I very quickly realized. And there was just no systems or processes in place for what she did and what the owner did, and it was just a mess. There was like orders all over the place, and
I mean, I think you can scrape through on customer service with someone who's not very good at it if they've got all the templates and all the systems to do the foundations in place. But if you've got no systems and you've got an awful person, it becomes quite obvious what you need to do next, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So I was kind of working in the business and on the business at that time. I managed to bring a Philippine-based customer service person who I'd worked with before. So we had two people kind of working together and very quickly putting those systems and processes in place. That's a big part of what I do in the business, is kind of look at it, what can I automate? There were so many things, again, that were being done manually, like price updates. We get a supplier promotion and they were kind of manually changing the prices in Shopify. And then when the promotion ended, manually changing them back. Whereas there's really cool apps that, allow you to do that. So you can just put start date, finish date, and it's done. So the same with adding new products and updating products and things. So the team really is still like me, an Australian part-time customer service person to do some of the sales and follow-up work, and one Philippine-based customer service person who handles like suppliers, orders, that kind of thing. But next year, going into the season, I'll make sure we're staffed up so that I'm not having to do that kind of customer service work. I find I'm a bit too attached to it as well. Like it stresses me out if there's like an order problem or particularly Christmas. It's like people are ordering kids products for Christmas, and I'm like, I need this to get there in time. And when a parcel gets lost by the courier or something, and so I think I need someone else in to manage that for this year, and also to handle the sales. So when we're dealing with $2,000 items, sometimes people want to chat on the phone just to kind of know that we're a genuine business and kind of answer questions and things. So, and then in terms of all the other bits, like the marketing side of it, like copy and things, I've kind of built up a few people that I've worked with in the past, and then used like freelancing websites like Upwork and other places to kind of find and hire team members for some of that copy for email marketing or for blog posts and things.
So really keeping it, you said about it being location independent, but it's also keeping it very flexible workforce wise as well, and as streamlined as you can, I suppose. It's not like you've got a bank of full-time marketing people to find work for. It's what marketing do we need to do? Great, let's get someone on Upwork to write that. Let's work on this piece. Let's do that. Get the sales team on that. So it's all those systems, I suppose, isn't it? You said, you're going to be increasing the amount of customer service team you've got going into this year's peak, but that's going to be really easy because now the systems are in place for them to be able to do a good job pretty much with not so much training. I'm getting to a question. As everyone can listen, this is making me think. So you're going into another peak. You are usually buying and selling businesses. Have you got an idea right now? You don't have to tell us what the idea is. Have you got an idea of when you might exit, of how long you're going to keep this one? Or are you someone who you've got a point you want to get to, or are you just going to wait until it feels like the right time? How do you know I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do you know when to sell?
It's a good question. I accidentally brought another business in when was it? So a few months, like the end of December, like January time, which is a B2B e-commerce business. It just seemed like too good an opportunity to miss, another shiny object. And so at the moment, I guess what I was looking at is a way to spread out the peaks. So this one's a much more consistent business. When you've got a peak and then a lull, it's harder to staff. Because you're looking for more temporary staff. Although, again, we're looking at expanding the range, so we're doing more things like fire pits and stuff that people will want in the winter months. So we're working on that as well. I haven't really got a kind of exit strategy on this at the moment. I think I'd like to do another peak season and see how well that goes, like in terms of how well we're able to manage stock levels, how well we're able to manage staffing. Also kind of playing with because we've got quite a lot of revenue happening, a lot of customers happening, how we can build in some of that giving back elements to it. Like we partnered with an organization called I=Change, which is an Australian organization. It's basically a percentage of each sale. You choose basically 3 charity projects, and then after the purchase, the customer gets to choose which of those 3 they want their donation to be put towards. And so that feels kind of cool to kind of have that element in there. And the other thing is kind of using it as a vehicle to help promote sustainability in some way. And, I haven't really formulated what that kind of looks like yet, but we're working with quite a lot of interesting, like smaller suppliers of things like mud kitchens and things now. And I'm interested kind of how we can build that sustainability element, into there as well. So yeah, the short answer is I don't know really, but we'll see.
E-commerce Master Plan is supported by some of the greatest companies in the e-commerce sector. Here's a reminder of who they are.
We all know promotions work, but they damage brands and margins. RevLifter's intelligent offers drive results by using behavioural signals to target the right customers at the right time. When Radley London partnered with RevLifter, they saw 15% more conversions, 20% higher AOV, and an 8% saving on promotional costs. Wow! Stop wasting discounts on people who would buy anyway. You can try RevLifter free for 90 days. Visit ecmp.info/RevLifter to learn more and let RevLifter handle the heavy lifting. That's ecmp.info/RevLifter. ecmp.info/RevLifter.
It's time for the top tips round.
Okay, I love this section because it gives me and our listeners some really quick ideas for taking our business to the next level. Tom, are you ready for the top tips?
I am.
Okay, the book top tip. If everyone listening to this podcast agreed to take Friday off and read a book to make their business better, which book would you recommend?
This is tough because there's so many good books. My top pick is going to be Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And there's a few books in this genre that are really interesting I'd recommend, like Deep Work by Cal Newport, The One Thing. It's just such a good book. And it's one of those books you need to read again because it's like you didn't quite, well, you got it at the time, but like then you forgot. It's really about like that. What do you need to get rid of first? What do you do at the moment that you don't need to be doing at all? And then what can you outsource and delegate? What can you do better? How can you systemize with the goal of making your life better rather than just working more? So yeah, I really like his stuff. I like his podcast. Yeah, it's a good book.
It's one of my favourite books and I definitely need a reread. So thank you very much for mentioning that one and reminding me about it, Tom. The traffic top tip. Which marketing method do you either prize above all others or think doesn't get the press it deserves?
Now, I was going to say SEO for this one because, I see so much revenue being left on the table by small e-commerce brands. But I actually think conversion rate is probably where I'm going to go. Just because, again, like you can, with the existing traffic that you've got, and it's something that I worked on the Best Backyard, there was so many kind of small wins around, improving that conversion rate. So I didn't have to get any more traffic. the traffic was already there. So yeah, I guess it's not really a traffic tip, but a revenue generating tip without needing to get more traffic.
I always love a recommendation of conversion rate optimization because it's the thing you can do that makes all your marketing look better. It's like everything improves when you get the conversion rate optimization right. So loving that. Thank you, Tom. The tool top tip, maybe a collaboration tool, a social media plugin, a phone app, or just a way of working. Is there a cool little tool you use that makes you and your team more efficient from day to day?
So I'm actually going to go against the rules and go for two here. My first one is the way we do shipping is really complicated at the Best Backyard. And anyone who's got a business out there that sells heavy, big items, because we're dispatching from both our own warehouse and from like our own 3PL warehouse and from multiple supplier locations, it's really complicated delivery. So we use a really cool Shopify app called Bespoke Shipping, which we've tried most of the Shopify kind of shipping apps. And this one just has the best customer support. Basically, they set it up for you. And so that's just a shout out for them. My main one is, so it's not a sexy tool, but it's Google Analytics. So I just see so many people, like there's so much in Google Analytics that you can dive into, so much data you can get out of there about your business that again, people are kind of, choosing to do something on their site because they think it looks good or because, whereas if you dive into the data, you can see what are people actually doing on your site. And there's heat mapping tools and there's other things you can do, but just within Google Analytics, you can see what your trends are, where your traffic's coming from, what people are doing on your site, where they're, where they're bouncing away, where they're going to multiple pages, what's happening with your checkout flow. So I think spending a bit of time in Google Analytics is a worthwhile endeavor.
Love those two recommendations. Thank you. The carbon top tip. What's your favorite way to reduce the carbon footprint of an e-commerce store?
Yeah, so this is something I'm kind of battling with at the moment because, we sell big, heavy items, which obviously delivery is a challenge. We've actually been working quite closely with our suppliers. Now we're getting bigger and we're sending quite a lot of volume to them. We're actually going to them and saying, like, what are you doing about the carbon footprint? And what, this is important to us. This matters. And if you want us to continue promoting you as one of our kind of major suppliers, we need to see some action there. So I think that would be my tip, like go up your supply chain and see what you can do. If you're going to work with a particular delivery partner, see what it is they're actually going to do. If you're looking at importing products, working with, those manufacturers as well, would be my top tip. And I think because we're not just changing the impact for your business, you're actually making that impact bigger across, all the businesses they work with.
I love that advice because it kind of like you say, it's not just about what happens in your business. You're encouraging other people to go on that journey as well. So really love that tip. Thank you, Tom. Now, before we say goodbye, could you please let the listeners know where they can get in contact with you and your business should they want to?
Sure. So yeah, the best way is to go onto the website, which is thebestbackyard.com.au. All of the products and information is on there. If anyone wants to get in touch with me personally, just use the contact form on the website. It's probably the best bet. Put it for the attention of Tom and it will find its way to me eventually.
Awesome. Tom, it's been fascinating chatting with you and I wish you all the best for the next peak of your business and the other business you've bought. And do I say try not to buy anything else? No, I don't think I do. If there's a bright, shiny object you think is going to work, your track record suggests it will. So Tom, thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chloe. I've enjoyed it.
So fascinating chat there with Tom. I really enjoyed that. Lots of extra things I could have asked him. So maybe we'll get him back on the show again. Let me know what you think. My key takeaways, I think the importance of speaking to the founder if you're going for a purchase and factoring that into your risk decisions around the due diligence process, being ready once you bought it to anticipate there's going to be more problems and things you hadn't spotted that you're going to have to deal with. The simplicity of his approach as well. really focusing in. I mean, it's not really a surprise that essentialism was his top tip, was it really? When you listen back to what he's saying about, getting the systems right, focusing in on what's going to make the impact. It sounds like the SEO changes that he's made to grow the sales and the CRO changes aren't that huge, but they've made a huge difference in how the business operates. So lots to take away from that. So maybe if you're not planning an acquisition, then try and take a look at your own business from a consultant's view. Try and take that view outside it. And if you are planning an acquisition, lots of extra food for thought for you there. You can get your hands on our notes from this episode, including the top tips and links to what we mentioned by heading over to ecommercemasterplan.com. You can also use the direct to episode short links. Just put ecmp.info/the number of this episode into the URL bar and you'll be redirected straight to the correct episode page. When you get to the website, please do add yourself to our email list for all the other cool things we share to help you improve your business. And if you like this episode, then make sure you check out episode 538, where we're also talking about a brand acquisition, the acquisition of children's brand Scandiborn. Very different scenario. In that case, it was adding it into an existing business, but lots of interesting advice there. And the reason we got to speak to Tom today was because he applied to be a guest on the show. So if you are thinking, I've got something I'd love to share with Chloe's audience, then head to ecmp.info/guest and put in your application. Thank you for tuning in to this and every episode that you do of the e-commerce masterplan podcast. I bring you a new interview every single week because I want to inspire and help e-commerce business owners like you to succeed and thrive with your businesses, including progressing along the path to net zero. So if you know someone this show can help, please tell them to listen to the e-commerce masterplan podcast. I hope you have a great week and don't forget to keep optimizing.
Thank you for listening to the e-commerce masterplan podcast. Find out more at ecommercemasterplan.com/podcast.
Stop wasting discounts on people who would buy anyway. Try RevLifter free for 90 days. Visit ecmp.info/RevLifter to learn more.